Chapter 1. A life reduced to quiet. Doug Bishop woke up at 6 every morning, not because he had to, but because his body didn't know what else to do with time anymore. The alarm clock was unnecessary. It still sat on the narrow nightstand, its plastic casing cracked along one side from a fall years ago. It had been replaced by habit, and habit was more reliable than anything he had owned in a long while. He lay still on the futon, staring at the ceiling. The apartment was just one room, which made mornings efficient. No hallways to walk down, no corners to turn, no echo of footsteps reminding him of empty space. His bed became his couch became his bed, and the distinction between the two had faded so completely that he rarely thought about it. After a few minutes, he sat up and stretched, joints cracking softly like an old building settling into place. "Still here," he muttered. It wasn't relief. It wasn't disappointment. It was observation. Doug moved through his routine with quiet precision. Coffee brewed in the same chipped mug, toast brown just enough but never more. He didn't rush, because nothing was waiting for him that couldn't afford patience. There had been a time when his mornings were loud. 3 little girls arguing over cereal bowls, his wife rushing through her routine with half-finished sentences, laughter cutting through everything like sunlight through blinds. He used to leave for work already tired and still somehow wanting more time in the noise. That was a different life. Doug buttered his toast and ate it standing at the counter, because he hadn't bought a table. There hadn't seemed much point. People bought tables for other people. He didn't think about it as loneliness. He'd learned the difference years ago. Loneliness hurt. What he had was quieter than that. More stable. Controlled. After breakfast, he washed his plate immediately, dried it, and returned it to the cabinet. Everything had its place. Not because he was meticulous, but because there wasn't anything extra to get in the way. At 7, he put on his jacket and left for work. The hallway outside his apartment smelled faintly of someone else's cooking, something fried and heavily spiced. Doug paused for a second, not out of curiosity but habit, then continued down the stairs. He didn't take the elevator. Elevators broke. Stairs didn't. Outside, the air carried the dull hum of the city, a constant, uninterested presence. Cars passed, people walked, conversations overlapped without ever touching him. Doug blended into it easily. At work, he did exactly what was expected of him and nothing more. He didn't volunteer stories. He didn't ask for details. People nodded at him and he nodded back. It was enough. Nobody expected anything from him, and he had learned to appreciate that. Nobody could take anything from him either. That had taken longer to learn. Across the country, Claire Bishop sat on the edge of her bed, staring at a white garment bag hanging from the closet door. It was supposed to feel exciting. Instead, it felt off. She tilted her head, as if changing the angle might fix the feeling. "Okay," she said to herself. "What's wrong with you?" The question hung there unanswered. The apartment around her was filled with evidence of her life. Shopping bags, carefully arranged decor, the subtle chaos of someone building a future. Her wedding was 3 months away, and everything was falling into place exactly as it should. Venue booked, flowers selected, guest list finalized. Perfect. So why didn't it feel that way? The thought came quietly at first, just a flicker at the edge of her mind. "Who's walking you down the aisle?" Claire blinked. "Well, Dad," she said aloud, as if confirming something obvious. It should have settled the question. Didn't. Her stomach tightened slightly, a discomfort that didn't have a clear source. She stood up abruptly, pacing once across the room before turning back again. "Dad," she repeated more slowly, and then, without meaning to, she saw something different. Not her stepfather, smiling and proud, ready to take her arm. Another image, older, less clear, worn around the edges like a photograph left in the sun too long. A man standing beside her. Doug, her father. Claire stopped pacing. That couldn't be right. She hadn't thought about him like that in years. There had been a time when he was part of everything. She knew that much. It wasn't something she had to remember. It was something she used to know automatically, like her own name. Somewhere along the way that had changed. When? She tried to pinpoint it, but the timeline slipped through her fingers. Memories blurred together. Phone calls that became shorter, visits that became less frequent, conversations that turned into requests. Money for this, money for that. "Hey, Doug," instead of "Dad." Claire felt a sudden, sharp twist of discomfort. "That's not." She trailed off. The door opened behind her, and Lily walked in carrying 2 shopping bags. "You would not believe the line at that place," Lily said, dropping the bags onto the bed. It was like everyone suddenly needed last-minute decoration advice. She paused when she noticed Claire's expression. "Okay, what's wrong?" Claire hesitated. "I was just thinking." "That's never a good start," Lily said, kicking off her shoes. Claire managed a small smile, then gestured vaguely toward the garment bag. "About the wedding." "Which part?" "Because we've already agreed the cake situation is under control." "No, not that." Claire exhaled slowly. "The aisle." Lily frowned. "What about it? Who's walking me down it?" "That's easy." Lily shrugged. "Dad. He's been talking about it for weeks." Claire shook her head. Not him. There was a pause. What? Our real dad, Claire said softly. Lily blinked, clearly thrown. Claire, I always thought. Claire stopped, searching for the right words. When I pictured it. When I was little. She laughed faintly. Every version of my wedding in my head. He was there. Lily stared at her for a moment, then leaned against the wall. That's random. I know. Do you even remember the last time you talked to him? Claire opened her mouth, then closed it again. No. The word hung heavy between them. Lily's expression shifted, uncertainty replacing her casual tone. Do we even know where he is? Claire felt something unfamiliar and uncomfortable settle in her chest. I don't think we do. For the first time in a very long time, Doug Bishop existed not as a name, not as a forgotten obligation, but as a question. And neither of them knew the answer. Chapter 2. The search for a man they lost. Lily did not like uncomfortable silences. She had spent most of her life finding ways to fill them. Jokes, distractions, opinions that came quickly and confidently whether they were fully formed or not. This silence, however, was stubborn. It sat between her and Claire like an unexpected guest that refused to leave. Okay, Lily finally said, pushing herself upright. So let's say that thought isn't completely insane. Claire let out a quiet, relieved breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. That's generous of you. I'm being mature, Lily replied. It's rare. Appreciate it. Claire gave a faint smile, but it didn't last. I just don't understand how it got like this, she admitted. How do you just forget someone like that? Lily crossed her arms, thinking. We didn't forget him, she said after a moment. Not exactly. Claire raised an eyebrow. Really? Because I can't even remember his voice. That landed harder than either of them expected. Lily looked away. Okay, maybe we forgot a little. A knock came at the door before Claire could respond. It opened almost immediately afterward, because only one person in their lives treated doors as polite suggestions. Emma stepped in, balancing a takeout bag and her phone between her hands. I bring food and zero emotional stability, she announced. What did I miss? She froze mid-step when she noticed the mood in the room. Oh no, this isn't about chair arrangements again. Is it? Claire shook her head. No, it's something else. Emma set the bag down slowly. Why does that sound worse? Lily gestured vaguely toward Claire. She's having a wedding crisis. I'm not. She's thinking about Dad. Emma blinked. Which one? Claire winced slightly. Exactly. Emma leaned back against the door, her brows pulling together. Okay, I'm going to need more context, because that sentence feels like it skipped several steps. Claire sat back down on the edge of the bed. I was thinking about the ceremony, she explained, walking down the aisle, and it didn't feel right picturing. She hesitated, then finished quietly. Mark. Emma nodded slowly, processing. And you thought about Doug. Claire nodded. The room fell quiet again, but this time it was heavier. More thoughtful. Emma exhaled through her nose. That's actually not crazy. Lily turned to her. Seriously? You too? Emma shrugged. I mean, he is our dad. Technically. Technically, Lily repeated, latching onto the word like it offered structure. Claire didn't like how that sounded. That's not how I meant it. Emma pushed off the door and walked further into the room, her expression softening. No, I know. She trailed off, searching for the right way to say something that had never really been said out loud. We didn't exactly make it easy for him to stay that. Claire flinched. That's one way to put it. Lily sighed, running a hand through her hair. Okay, hold on. Before we spiral into guilt and self-reflection, because I can already feel it coming, we don't even know anything, right? Claire looked up. What do you mean? I mean, we're acting like he's just available. Somewhere. Waiting. Lily gestured vaguely. We don't know where he is, or if he'd even want to hear from us. Emma finished. Lily nodded. Yeah. Claire's chest tightened again, but this time it wasn't confusion. It was something sharper. Then we find out, she said. Both of her sisters looked at her. Claire straightened slightly, her voice gaining strength the more she spoke. We don't just sit here and talk about whether it's weird or not. If I'm even going to ask him, if I'm even going to think about it, I need to know where he is. Lily hesitated. And then what? You just call him like nothing happened. Claire opened her mouth, but no answer came immediately. Emma stepped in before the silence could grow. Okay, step 1, she said, clapping her hands lightly. We figure out how to contact him. Then we decide how badly we messed that up. Despite everything, Lily huffed a small laugh. Finally, a plan with realistic expectations. Claire let out a breath, nodding. Okay, so, how do we find him? Emma was already pulling out her phone. Well, we start with the obvious. Internet. Lily leaned over her shoulder. Just type his name. Doug Bishop? That's like searching for Guy. Emma scrolled anyway. Yeah, this is useless, she muttered after a few seconds. There are 50 of them, and half are probably bots or accountants. Claire frowned. What about Aunt Karen? Both of her sisters stilled. It was such an obvious idea that none of them had thought of it immediately. Lily snapped her fingers. Right? Dad's sister. Emma nodded, already adjusting her search. She'd definitely know where he is. Claire felt a flicker of something hopeful. Yeah. She used to send us birthday cards. Didn't she? Up until. Emma slowed, her expression shifting. Up until what? Lily asked. Emma didn't answer right away. Her phone screen reflected in her eyes as she scrolled, her brows knitting together. That's weird. Claire stood. What? Emma looked up, her voice quieter now. I'm not finding anything current. Just. She swallowed. An obituary. The word landed like a dropped glass. An obituary? Lily repeated. Emma hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. From 5 years ago. Claire felt the room tilt slightly. No. That can't. She wasn't even that old. It says traffic accident, Emma said softly. Highway collision. Lily let out a slow breath, running a hand over her face. We didn't even know. No, Claire said, shaking her head faintly. We didn't. The realization settled over them in layers. They hadn't spoken to their aunt in years. They hadn't known when she passed. They hadn't been there. Claire sank back onto the bed, the earlier resolve shifting into something heavier. If we didn't know about this, she murmured, then how are we supposed to find him? Emma lowered her phone slightly, her expression thoughtful. We keep looking, she said. Lily glanced at her. That's your plan. Emma shrugged, but there was a quiet determination in her eyes. Yeah, because not finding him doesn't feel like an option anymore. Claire looked between her sisters, something firm settling into place beneath the guilt. We didn't lose him, she said slowly. We let him go. Neither of them argued. And if he doesn't want anything to do with us, Claire continued, her voice steady now, then at least we'll know we tried. Lily nodded once. Okay. Emma gave a small, decisive smile. Then we try. For the first time since the thought had taken root, Claire felt something shift. Not relief, but direction. Somewhere out there was a man they had erased so completely that even grief had missed him. And now, years too late, they were finally going to look. Chapter 3, A Name on a Lease. The first night of their search felt almost productive. The second felt like digging through sand with their bare hands. By the third, the novelty had worn off, leaving behind something less comfortable, persistence sharpened by guilt. Claire sat cross-legged on her living room floor, laptop open in front of her, surrounded by scattered notes that didn't amount to much. Names, fragments of addresses, phone numbers that no longer connected. A map app glowed faintly on her screen, dotted with pins that led nowhere useful. Lily sprawled on the couch, one arm hanging off the side, scrolling through her phone with a kind of restless impatience she couldn't quite hide. This is ridiculous, she muttered. There are 9 Doug Bishops in one state alone. What if we find the wrong one and just show up at some random guy's house? Emma, perched at the table nearby, didn't look up from her own screen. Then we apologize and leave, she said. It's not illegal to be confused. Lily snorted. It should be at this point. Claire didn't respond immediately. She was staring at a listing on her laptop, something she had already clicked on twice. What about this one? She said quietly. Emma glanced over. What VE you got? Claire turned the screen slightly so they could see. It's not much, just a rental history record. Name matches, age is close, and it lists a city we've never lived in. Lily sat up slightly. That sounds promising, she admitted. What city? Claire hesitated, as if saying it out loud might somehow make it less real. Springfield. Emma made a face. Which one? Claire blinked. There are multiple? Too many, Emma said dryly. We need more than just a name and a vague Midwest vibe. Claire leaned back, rubbing her temple. I know. She trailed off, then admitted, it's the closest thing we've found so far. Lily studied the screen more closely. Okay, what else does it say? Lease started 3 years ago, Claire said. No other tenants listed. Emma tapped her fingers lightly against the table. That fits, she said. Lily looked at her. What does that fits mean? Emma shrugged. It means, if he's been alone this whole time, it makes sense he'd have a simple setup. No shared names. No family listed. Claire felt something twist uncomfortably inside her. Yeah, she said softly. That fits. They fell quiet for a moment, each of them thinking through the same implication. He had been alone. Not temporarily. Not recently. For years. Lily broke the silence first, clearing her throat. Okay, so let's say this is him, she said. What's the plan? We just show up in Springfield and knock on doors until somebody answers. Claire hesitated. I don't know yet. Emma leaned back in her chair. We could try calling, she suggested. With what number? Lily shot back. Emma tilted her phone. I'm looking, she said calmly. People leave digital footprints. You just have to know where to look. Claire watched her younger sister with a mix of admiration and unease. You sound like you've done this before. Emma smiled faintly. Let's just say I'm persistent. A few minutes passed in focused silence. The kind that used to feel comfortably familiar between them. Shared space without the need to fill it constantly. Now it carried something heavier. Emma suddenly sat up straighter. Okay, she said. Lily leaned forward immediately. That tone means something. Emma turned her phone toward them. I found a number connected to that lease. Claire's heart jumped. Are you sure it's him? Emma shook her head. Nope, not even a little. But it's something. Lily hesitated. Are we really doing this? Claire didn't answer right away. She stared at the number on the screen, a string of digits that felt strangely significant. If it's not him, she said slowly, then we're no worse off than we are now. And if it is? Lily pressed. Claire swallowed. Then we stop guessing. Emma held the phone out. Well? Claire stared at it for a long moment, her hand hovering but not quite reaching. I don't think I can call, she admitted. Lily blinked. What? Why not? Because I don't know what I'd say, Claire said, her voice tightening. Hi. We forgot about you for a decade. How have you been? Emma's expression softened. Okay, then don't call. Claire looked up. What? Text, Emma said simply. It's less immediate. Gives him a choice. Gives you time to not panic halfway through a sentence. Lily nodded. Actually, yeah, that's smart. Claire hesitated again, then slowly took the phone. The blank message field stared back at her. She typed one word. Hi. She stared at it, then deleted it. Lily watched over her shoulder. You might want to use more than one syllable. I'm thinking, Claire snapped, then sighed. Sorry. Emma leaned forward slightly. Start simple, she said gently. You don't have to explain everything right now. Claire swallowed, then began typing again. This is Claire. She paused. Her fingers hovered over the screen, frozen between past and present. Would he even recognize the name? Would he care? She continued anyway. I think this might be my dad's number. She stopped again, her throat tightening. That sounds terrible, she muttered. Lily winced. Yeah, it kind of does. Emma nodded. Try again. Claire exhaled slowly and erased the message. She started over. Hi, this is Claire Bishop. I'm not sure if this is the right number. If it is, I'd like to talk. She stared at it, reading it twice. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even good. But it was honest. I'm sending it, she said quietly, as if saying it out loud committed her to the action. Do it, Lily said. Emma gave a small nod. Claire pressed send. The message disappeared upward, replaced by a single word beneath it. Delivered. The three of them stared at the screen as if expecting it to respond immediately. Didn't. Seconds passed. Then minutes. Lily leaned back slowly. Well, she said, that's either the most anticlimactic moment of our lives, or the beginning of something terrible. Claire managed a faint, tight smile. Maybe both. Emma reached over and gently lowered the phone. You don't have to watch it, she said. If he responds, he responds. Claire nodded, though her eyes lingered on the screen for another second before she let it go. Okay. The room settled into a quieter rhythm after that. The urgency had shifted. There was nothing left to do but wait. Across the country, Doug Bishop sat in his apartment, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. He had finished work hours ago. Dinner had been simple as usual. One plate, one fork, washed and put away immediately after. The evening stretched ahead of him the way it always did. Quiet, predictable, uninterrupted. He sat on the edge of his futon, flipping through a book he had already read once before. It wasn't particularly engaging, but it passed the time well enough. His phone buzzed. Doug didn't reach for it right away. It wasn't unusual for his phone to buzz. Spam calls, wrong numbers, automated reminders. None of them required urgency. It buzzed again, shorter this time. A follow-up notification. He closed the book and set it aside, then picked up the phone with a mild, indifferent curiosity. One new message. Unknown number. Doug opened it. Hi, this is Claire Bishop. I'm not sure if this is the right number. If it is, I'd like to talk. He stared at the screen. The name meant nothing at first, just letters, familiar in structure, but disconnected. Then something shifted. Not a memory, a recognition, faint, distant, like hearing a song you hadn't realized you knew until the chorus. Doug frowned slightly, his thumb hovering over the screen. Claire, he said aloud. The word felt strange in his mouth. He tried to place it, tried to attach it to something solid. It slipped away before he could. Doug locked the phone and set it down beside him. The room returned to its usual quiet. He picked up his book again. Read the same line twice. Didn't process either time. After a moment, he set the book down again. His gaze shifted, almost reluctantly, back to the phone. Sat there, unchanged. Waiting. Doug leaned back slowly, his expression unreadable. Ha! He didn't pick it up again. Not yet. But for the first time in a long time, the quiet in the room didn't feel quite as steady as it had before. Chapter 4. The knock that doesn't belong. Doug didn't respond that night. Or the next. By the third day, the message still sat there, unanswered, undisturbed. as if it had never belonged in his life to begin with. He noticed it, of course. He noticed everything. He just didn't act on it. The name, Claire Bishop, had settled into his thoughts in an uncomfortable way. Not intrusive, not overwhelming. Just present. Like a chair someone had placed in the middle of a room he was used to walking through without obstacles. He had nearly picked up the phone twice. Nearly. Then he had remembered something simple. People didn't reach out after years of silence without wanting something. And Doug Bishop had spent a long time removing himself from the position of being wanted. 3 states away, Claire was discovering that waiting felt worse than not knowing. He's not going to answer. Lily said it casually, but there was an edge to it. Claire stared at her phone again, as if she could will the screen to change. It's only been 3 days. Exactly, Lily replied. If it was the right number and he cared, he would have said something by now. Emma, sitting across from them, shook her head. That's not fair. Why not? Because we don't get to measure how fast he responds after ignoring him for years, Emma said plainly. Lily opened her mouth, then closed it again. Okay, that's annoyingly reasonable, she admitted. Claire lowered her phone slowly, her fingers tightening slightly around it. So what do we do? Emma didn't hesitate this time. We go see him. Lily blinked. That's a leap. It's the only way to stop guessing, Emma said. We have an address. We have a name. We can either keep sitting here imagining every possible outcome, or we can find out which ones are real. Claire's stomach twisted, but not with hesitation. With fear. He might not want to see us. Emma met her gaze. Then we leave, she said gently. But at least we'll know. Lily sighed, leaning back. This feels like the start of a bad decision. Emma smiled faintly. Most important things do. Claire looked down at her phone one more time. The message was still there. Unanswered. She exhaled slowly. Okay, she said. Doug heard the knock at his door on a Saturday afternoon. He paused mid-step, a small stack of folded laundry in his hands. Nobody knocked on his door. Delivery drivers didn't bother, they left packages downstairs. Neighbors minded their own business. He had built his life in a way that didn't invite interruption. The knock came again. Firm. Not aggressive, but certain. Doug set the laundry down. For a moment he considered ignoring it. Silence had solved most things in his life. The knock came a third time. He frowned slightly, then walked to the door. He didn't rush. Whoever it was had already waited longer than anyone usually did. Doug unlocked the door and opened it halfway. 3 women stood outside. Strangers. All of them familiar. Took a second longer than it should have. Then something in his expression shifted, just slightly. Recognition didn't arrive fully formed. It surfaced in fragments. The shape of a face. The angle of a gaze. Something in their posture that felt known. Claire spoke first. Hi. Doug said nothing. Up close, the resemblance was clearer. Not exact, not immediate, but persistent. Like looking at a reflection distorted by time. Are you, Doug? Lily asked, her voice less confident than she intended. Doug blinked once. Yes. The single word settled heavily between them. Claire swallowed. I'm Claire. Doug's gaze remained steady, waiting. And this is Lily, Claire continued, gesturing slightly. And Emma. Emma offered a small, tentative smile. Hi. There it was. 3 names. 3 connections. Doug let out a slow breath through his nose. Okay, he said. It wasn't warm. It wasn't cold. It was acknowledgement. Silence stretched again, awkward and dense. Lily shifted slightly, glancing at Claire. Are we standing out here or? Doug stepped back, opening the door wider. Come in. They entered carefully, as if stepping into unfamiliar territory. Which, in every sense that mattered, they were. The apartment was exactly what his life had become. Small, functional, empty of anything that wasn't necessary. Emma looked around first. Oh, she said softly. Lily crossed her arms, her eyes scanning the room. You weren't kidding about the minimalist lifestyle, she muttered. Claire didn't comment. She was looking at Doug. Really looking at him. He was older than she remembered, though she wasn't entirely sure what she remembered anymore. Lines etched deeper into his face. Hair grayer, thinner. But his posture was the same. Straight, steady, present without reaching. Doug closed the door behind them. So, he said, turning back. You found me. Claire nodded. It took some effort. I imagine it did. There was no humor in the statement. Just fact. Another pause. Emma stepped forward slightly. We sent you a message, she said. A few days ago. I saw it. Claire's chest tightened. You did. Doug nodded once. And you didn't reply? He met her gaze evenly. No. There was no apology attached to it. No explanation offered. Just truth. Lily let out a small huff. Well, that's encouraging. Claire shot her a look, then turned back to Doug. We didn't know if it was the right number, she said. We didn't even know if I'd want to hear from you? Doug finished. She stopped. Yeah. Doug considered that. Then gave a small, almost imperceptible shrug. I hadn't decided yet. The honesty in it was so direct it caught them off guard. Claire swallowed. Did we interrupt something? Doug glanced around his apartment briefly, then shook his head. No, there was nothing to interrupt. Emma took a slow breath. We didn't come here to... She hesitated, then restarted. We know this is strange. Doug's expression didn't change. It's not strange, he said. It's just unexpected. That felt worse somehow. Claire took a step forward, her hands twisting slightly together. I'm getting married, she said. The words came out quickly, as if saying them faster would make them easier to hear. Doug nodded once. Congratulations. Thank you, she said softly. She stopped, searching his face for something. Any opening, any sign that this wasn't as impossible as it felt. I wanted to ask you something. Doug waited. Claire inhaled slowly. I was hoping you would walk me down the aisle. The room went still. Even Lily didn't speak. Doug didn't react immediately. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look angry. He simply thought. It only lasted a few seconds, but it stretched long enough to feel like an answer was already forming before he spoke. No, he said. The word landed cleanly. Claire blinked, as if she hadn't heard it correctly. No. Doug met her gaze, his voice calm and steady. I won't do that. The silence that followed was heavier than anything before it. Emma shifted, her brow furrowing. Can we ask why? Doug's expression remained neutral. Because that's not something you ask someone to do after all of this. He gestured vaguely, not at them specifically, but at the space between past and present. That's not a favor. That's a role. Claire felt her throat tighten. You're my father. Doug shook his head slightly. No, he said quietly. I was. The words hit harder than anything else he'd said. Lily straightened. That's not fair. Doug looked at her. It is, he said simply. Claire took another step forward, her voice unsteady now. We didn't mean for it to. I'm not saying you did, Doug interrupted, not unkindly. I'm saying it happened. Emma crossed her arms, studying him. So what, we just don't get to fix it? Doug considered that. You can do whatever you want, he said. But you don't get to pretend it didn't happen. Claire shook her head, her eyes burning. That's not what I'm trying to do. Then what are you trying to do? Doug asked. She froze, because she didn't have a clean answer. Not one that sounded right out loud. After a long moment, Doug exhaled softly. If you want to talk, he said. We can talk. Hope flickered briefly in Claire's chest. But I'm not going to show up for one day, he continued, and play a part in a life I haven't been in. His gaze didn't waver. That's not real. And I'm not interested in pretending. The hope dimmed, but it didn't disappear entirely. Claire nodded slowly, tears threatening but not falling. Okay. Doug gestured lightly toward the room. You're already here, he said. So sit if you want. It wasn't warmth, but it wasn't rejection either. It was something in between. And for the first time, that felt like enough to stay. Chapter 5, Terms Without a Title. They didn't sit right away. Not because there weren't places, there were only two, really, but because sitting implied comfort and none of them had figured out how to be comfortable yet. Doug solved it by sitting first. He lowered himself onto the futon with the same unhurried ease. He seemed to apply to everything, resting his hands briefly on his knees before leaning back slightly. Only 2 seats, he said, glancing between them. You'll have to negotiate. Lily huffed a quiet laugh, more reflex than humor. Of course you've made that part complicated. Emma nudged her lightly and stepped forward, taking the chair by the small counter. I'm good here. Claire hesitated, then sat at the far end of the futon, leaving a careful space between herself and Doug. Lily remained standing for a moment before finally perching on the edge of the counter beside Emma. It wasn't symmetrical, but it worked. Doug looked at them, each in turn, taking his time as if memorizing details he didn't fully trust himself to recognize later. So, he said at last. You found me. You asked your question, I said no. He tilted his head slightly. What happens now? Lily crossed her arms. That's a good question. Claire shot her a look. We didn't come here just for that, she said quickly. Doug's expression didn't change. No, the single word wasn't challenging. It was curious. Claire faltered. Well, not just that, she corrected, though the words didn't feel as solid as she wanted them to. Emma leaned forward slightly, resting her elbows on her knees. We came because we realized something, she said. Doug shifted his gaze to her. And what's that? Emma held his gaze, steady and honest. That we don't know you. The statement hung in the air, simple but heavier than it sounded. Doug considered it. That's accurate. Claire winced. That's not what I meant. Emma shook her head slightly. No, it is, she said softly. We don't. Not anymore. Doug's eyes flicked back to Claire. And you'd like to change that? Yes, Claire said immediately. There was no hesitation in it this time. Doug watched her for a moment, as if weighing the word itself. Why? The question wasn't sharp, but it was direct enough that none of them could dodge it easily. Claire opened her mouth, then stopped. Lily answered instead. Because we should have already, she said. Isn't that enough? Doug shook his head. No. Lily blinked. No. No. Doug repeated calmly. Doing something because you think you should isn't the same as wanting to. Emma tilted her head slightly. And you think we don't want to? I think you don't know yet, Doug said. The quiet certainty in his tone made it hard to argue. Claire looked down at her hands. That's not fair. Doug didn't respond immediately. I didn't say it to be fair, he said after a moment. I said it to be true. Silence settled again, but this time it felt less uncertain, more grounded. Emma broke it first. Okay, she said, sitting back slightly. Then let's figure it out. Doug raised an eyebrow. Figure what out? If we want this, she replied simply. Whatever this is. Lily glanced at her. That's very rational of you. Emma smiled faintly. I'm managing expectations. Doug leaned back slightly, studying her. And what do you expect? Emma shrugged. Probably a lot of awkward conversations, she said. Some things we don't like hearing. Maybe some things you don't like hearing either. She paused, then added, and starting over, I guess. Doug's gaze shifted briefly, thoughtful. Starting over, he repeated. Claire looked up again. Not pretending nothing happened, she said, more carefully this time. Just not staying where we are either. Doug let out a quiet breath, considering. You're asking for something without a name, he said. Lily tilted her head. What does that mean? It means you're not asking to be my daughters, Doug said. And you're not asking to be strangers. His eyes moved between them. So whatever you're asking for doesn't have a clear definition. That's kind of the point, Emma said. Doug nodded slowly. I figured. Another brief silence, but this one felt less fragile. Claire leaned forward slightly, her voice softer now. If we keep talking, she said, what would that look like for you? Doug considered the question longer than the others. When he answered, his voice was steady, measured. It looks like honesty, he said. Not convenience. His gaze settled on Claire. It means you don't get to call me when it fits into your life and disappear when it doesn't. Claire nodded quickly. I understand that. It means I don't pretend we have something we don't, he continued. No titles you haven't earned. No roles you haven't lived. Lily shifted slightly. So we don't call you Dad. Doug met her gaze. No, there wasn't anger in it. Just finality. Emma exhaled slowly. Okay. Claire's chest tightened, but she nodded as well. Okay. Doug watched their reactions carefully, as if expecting resistance. When it didn't come, something in his posture eased only slightly. And it means, he added, that I don't owe you anything I'm not willing to give. Lily let out a small breath. That one goes both ways, right? Doug inclined his head. It does. Emma nodded. Then that's fair. Claire looked between them, then back at Doug. And you're willing to try? Doug didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced around the apartment briefly, his gaze lingering on nothing in particular before returning to them. I'm willing to see what happens, he said. It wasn't enthusiastic. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't closed. Claire felt something loosen in her chest, just a little. That's enough, she said quietly. Lily shifted off the counter, stretching slightly. Well, she said, that was significantly less of a disaster than I expected. Doug's lips twitched barely. Low expectations help. Emma smiled. I told you. Claire hesitated for a moment, then asked the question that had been sitting quietly at the edge of her thoughts. Can we come back? Doug looked at her. He didn't hesitate this time. Yes. It wasn't an invitation. It was permission. And for now, that was enough. Claire nodded, standing slowly. Okay. They moved toward the door together, the rhythm awkward but lighter than when they had arrived. Lily paused as she reached it, glancing back. For what it's worth, she said. You could have just slammed the door in our faces. Doug shrugged lightly. That would have been easier. Emma smirked. But less interesting. Doug didn't disagree. Claire opened the door, stepping into the hallway before turning back one last time. Thank you, she said. Doug met her gaze. For what? She hesitated, then answered honestly. For not pretending. Doug nodded once. Seems like we agree on that. She gave a small, genuine smile. Yeah. Then they left. The door closed softly behind them. Doug stood there for a moment, the quiet of the apartment settling back into place around him. But it didn't feel exactly the same. He walked back to the futon, sat down, and stared at the space where they had been sitting. 3 people. 3 conversations. 3 possibilities he hadn't had that morning. Doug leaned back slowly, exhaling through his nose. Ha! It wasn't acceptance. Not yet. But it wasn't resistance either. And for the first time in years, that space in between didn't feel quite so empty. Chapter 6 Lessons in something like love. They didn't come back the next day. Or the one after that. Doug noticed. He also noticed that he noticed, which was new enough to be mildly irritating. By the 4th day, he had successfully convinced himself that the visit had been an isolated moment, an anomaly that would settle back into nothing if he left it alone long enough. On the 5th day, there was another knock. Doug stared at the door for a few seconds before moving. This time, he didn't hesitate as long when he opened it. Claire stood there alone. She gave a small, uncertain smile. "Hi." Doug stepped back without comment, leaving the door open for her to enter. She did, slower than before, her eyes briefly scanning the apartment as if confirming it was the same place she remembered. It was. Doug closed the door. "You came back," he said. Claire nodded. "I said I would." Doug considered that. "You did." There was a pause. Then Claire gestured slightly toward the futon. "Same seating arrangement rules still apply?" Doug's mouth twitched faintly. "They're flexible," he said. She sat this time without the careful distance she had maintained before, though she still left enough space to respect it. Doug remained standing for a moment before sitting across from her in the chair Emma had claimed last time. "So," he said, "where are your sisters?" Claire glanced down briefly. "They wanted to come," she admitted. "But I thought it might be better if I didn't bring an audience." Doug nodded once. "That's reasonable." Another silence followed, but it wasn't as sharp as before. Claire folded her hands together. "I didn't come to ask for anything," she said. Doug leaned back slightly. "That's a good start." She let out a breath that almost became a small laugh. "I figured." He watched her carefully. "So why did you come?" Claire hesitated, then answered honestly. "Because it felt wrong to just show up, say something big, and leave it there." Doug studied her expression, weighing the words more than the phrasing. "And now I don't know," she admitted. That earned a faint nod from him. "That's more honest." Claire smiled slightly at that. "I'm trying." Doug glanced toward the small kitchenette. "Have you eaten?" She blinked, caught off guard by the shift. "No." He stood. "I have food." Claire watched him move, a quiet kind of surprise settling in. "What kind of food?" Doug opened a cabinet. "Basic," he said, "but edible." "That's a strong endorsement." He glanced over his shoulder. "It's accurate." She smiled again, more naturally this time. "Then yeah, I'll take basic." Doug nodded and began pulling out a pan. They moved around each other carefully at first, sharing the small space with an awareness that hadn't quite turned into ease yet. Claire leaned lightly against the counter. "You always do this?" she asked. "Cook? Make exactly what you need and nothing else." Doug shrugged. "Less waste." She hesitated, then added, "Less attachment?" He looked at her briefly, then back at what he was doing. "Something like that." Claire nodded slowly. "That makes sense." Doug raised an eyebrow. "Does it?" She thought about it. "Yeah," she said. "More than I'd like it to." He didn't respond to that, but something about the way he moved, slightly less guarded, slightly smoother, suggested he had heard it. The food was simple. Eggs, toast, something reheated that passed as protein. They ate at the counter, standing across from each other. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Claire broke the silence. "Did you ever think about starting over?" Doug didn't look up from his plate. "In what sense? Like, a new family? Or?" She trailed off, uncertain how far to push. Doug finished a bite before answering. "No." The answer was immediate. Claire nodded, though she couldn't hide the small flicker of something, sadness, maybe, in her eyes. "Not even once?" Doug considered the question more carefully this time. "Briefly," he admitted. "A long time ago. And," he set his fork down, "it didn't seem practical." Claire frowned slightly. "Practical?" Doug met her gaze. "I built something once," he said. "Put everything I had into it." His tone remained even, but there was weight beneath it now. "When it ended, I didn't see the value in trying again just so it could end differently." Claire swallowed. "That's kind of heartbreaking." Doug shrugged. "It's efficient." She shook her head faintly. "Those aren't the same thing." "I know," he said. Another pause. Claire set her plate down, leaning her elbows lightly on the counter. "Do you regret it?" Doug didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quieter. "No," he said. Then, after a moment, "But I'm aware of what it cost." Claire held his gaze. "What did it cost?" Doug looked at her for a long moment. Then he answered, simply, "Everything else." The words settled heavily between them. Claire felt the weight of them in a way she hadn't expected. "I'm sorry," she said, before she could stop herself. Doug shook his head once. "That's not yours to carry, isn't it?" she asked softly. He studied her again, more carefully this time. "You were kids," he said. "You made choices based on the life in front of you." He paused, then added, "So did I." Claire nodded slowly. "But we stopped choosing you." Doug didn't flinch. "Yes," he said. The honesty in it didn't feel cruel. Felt clean. Claire exhaled slowly. "I don't expect things to go back to what they were," she said. "They won't," Doug replied. "I know." She looked down briefly, then back up. "But I don't want this to be nothing either." Doug considered that. He could see it now, past the uncertainty, past the guilt. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking for presence. Not all at once, just something. Doug leaned back slightly. Then don't make it nothing, he said. Claire blinked. That's it. That's it, he repeated. She let out a small breath, somewhere between a laugh and relief. That sounds almost easy. Doug's expression shifted, the faintest hint of dry humor in his voice. It's not, but it is simple. Claire nodded, accepting that. They stood there for a moment longer, the space between them no longer as sharp, not yet comfortable but no longer fragile either. Claire picked up her plate, moving to the sink before pausing. Can I? She asked. Doug glanced at her. You don't have to. I know, she said. I want to. He nodded once. Then go ahead. She turned on the water, washing the plate carefully. Doug watched her for a second, then looked away, not needing to hover. When she finished, she dried her hands and turned back to him. I'll come back, she said. Doug met her gaze. Okay. No hesitation this time. She smiled, small but real. Okay. When she left, the apartment grew quiet again. But it didn't close in the same way it used to. Doug sat down slowly, looking at the space she had just occupied. Huh, he said softly. It wasn't much, but it wasn't nothing. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like something worth noticing. Chapter 7, Walking Without Asking. By the time Claire's visits became routine, Doug stopped counting the days between them. Not because the pattern was predictable, it wasn't, but because it no longer felt like something temporary that needed measuring. Sometimes she came alone. Sometimes she brought coffee, which Doug didn't need but accepted anyway. Once she brought Lily. That visit lasted shorter. Lily stood in the middle of the apartment, hands on her hips, turning slowly in a full circle. I still think you should get a table, she said finally. Doug glanced up from where he was sitting. I've considered it. You're lying. Yes. Claire sighed softly, but there was a smile hidden in it. Lily doesn't do subtle, she explained. I noticed, Doug replied. Lily dropped onto the futon without asking. This place feels like a waiting room, she said. Like you're expecting to leave but forgot where you were going. Doug considered that. That's not entirely inaccurate. Claire frowned slightly. You're staying, though? Doug looked at her. Yes. The answer didn't need elaboration. Lily leaned forward, elbows on her knees. So, I've got a question, she said. Doug raised an eyebrow. I assume you do. What are we supposed to call you? Claire froze slightly. Doug didn't. Doug, he said. Lily tilted her head. That still feels weird. That's fine, Doug replied calmly. You don't have to feel comfortable with it. Claire glanced between them. I'm okay with it, she said quietly. Doug gave a small nod. Lily exhaled. Yeah, okay. She rubbed the back of her neck. Just unlearning things, I guess. Doug's expression didn't change, but something in his shoulders loosened a fraction. That's part of it, he said. Emma came the next time. She brought questions. Do you always do everything the same way? She asked, watching Doug prepare coffee. Yes. Why? Doug poured the water slowly. It removes variables. Emma smiled. So you've optimized your life down to 0 surprises. Minimal surprises, he corrected. She leaned against the counter. That sounds efficient. It is. Also a little sad. Doug handed her a cup without comment. She took it. Still good coffee though. Somewhere in the middle of all of it, the conversations shifted. Less careful. Less measured. Not easy, never easy, but less like walking through something that might break. Claire found herself lingering longer each time, sometimes staying past the point where she had anything specific to say. Doug didn't ask her to leave. He didn't ask her to stay either. He just allowed the space. One evening, she sat on the futon while he sorted through a small stack of mail. Do you ever get bored? She asked. Doug glanced at her. No. She frowned slightly. How? He set the papers aside. Because boredom requires wanting something else to be happening, he said. I don't. Claire tilted her head. That sounds peaceful. It is. And limiting. Doug nodded once. That too. She studied him for a moment. You really gave up a lot, didn't you? Doug met her gaze. I let go of what wasn't there anymore. Claire didn't respond right away, because for the first time she understood the difference. The wedding approached faster than she expected. Appointments, fittings, decisions, everything layered on top of everything else. Her life was full, and yet, in the gaps between all of it, her thoughts kept returning to Doug. Not as a missing piece anymore, but as something separate, something real. One afternoon, she sat across from him again, turning a folded piece of paper over in her hands. Doug noticed. You're thinking too hard, he said. She glanced up. Is it that obvious? Yes. Claire smiled faintly, then looked back down at the paper. I stopped asking, she said. For what? She met his eyes. To walk me down the aisle. Doug didn't react immediately. Then he nodded once. I noticed. Claire exhaled slowly. I realized something. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I wasn't really asking you. Not fully. Doug leaned back slightly. What were you asking for? She thought about it. A shortcut, she said finally. Something that would make it feel like things weren't as broken as they are. Doug studied her for a moment. That's an honest answer. Claire nodded. I figured you wouldn't accept anything less. He didn't disagree. She unfolded the paper slightly, then folded it again without looking at it. I'm not going to ask anymore, she said. I think I understand why you said no. Doug's gaze softened. Not visibly, not in any obvious way, but enough that something shifted. Okay, he said. Claire looked at him, her expression steadier than it had been weeks ago. But I do want you there, she added. Doug didn't respond immediately. I'm not asking you to be anything you're not, she continued. Just be there. The words didn't carry pressure. They didn't try to fix anything. They simply made space. Doug looked at her for a long time. Then he nodded once. I'll think about it, he said. Claire smiled. Okay. The day before the wedding, the apartment felt smaller. Not physically, but in the way that decisions pressed against the walls. Doug sat on the futon, his phone in his hand. The invitation sat on the counter. He had looked at it more times than he intended. Not reading it, just acknowledging it. He thought about the aisle, about standing there, about pretending. No, that part hadn't changed. But something else had. Claire hadn't asked again. She hadn't pushed. She had adjusted. That mattered. Doug leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Huh, he said quietly. The sound lingered in the room for a moment, then faded. But the question behind it remained. Not whether he would go, but why he was considering it at all. And for the first time in a very long time, Doug Bishop found himself without an immediate answer. Across the city, Claire adjusted a final detail on her dress, her reflection steady in the mirror. Lily stood behind her, arms crossed. You're weirdly calm, Lily said. Claire smiled faintly. I stopped trying to control everything. That's not like you. I know. Emma leaned against the wall. Do you think he'll come? Claire met her own gaze in the mirror. I don't know, she said. And this time that uncertainty didn't feel unbearable. Felt honest. And somehow that was enough. Chapter 8, a different kind of ending. Doug arrived early. Not early enough to be noticed, but early enough that he wouldn't have to walk into a room already full of expectation. The venue was larger than anything he had been part of in years. Clean, polished, carefully arranged down to the smallest detail. People moved with purpose. Guests, staff, family. Each carrying a piece of something organized and intentional. He stood just inside the entrance for a moment, taking it in. Nobody recognized him. That was expected. Doug adjusted his jacket slightly, then moved to a seat along the side. Not too close to the front, not far enough to disappear. Present, but not central. That had always been the arrangement, in a way. He sat, hands resting loosely together, and waited. Backstage, Claire stood very still. Not because she needed to, because it helped. Lily paced near the wall, adjusting things that were already perfectly in place. Emma leaned casually against a chair, watching both of them with quiet amusement. You're going to wear a hole in that floor, Emma said. Lily didn't stop. I just need everything to go right, she muttered. Claire didn't turn. It will. Lily snorted softly. Based on what? Claire smiled faintly. Based on the fact that most of it already has. Lily paused, watching her. You're different, she said. Claire finally turned, smoothing a non-existent wrinkle in her dress. I know. Emma tilted her head. In a good way. Claire nodded. I think so. There was a brief pause. Then Lily asked the question they had both been holding back. Do you think he's here? Claire's expression didn't change. I don't know. Emma crossed her arms lightly. And you're okay with that? Claire took a breath. Yes, and she meant it. Doug didn't look for her when the ceremony began. Not immediately. He listened first. The music shifted, soft and deliberate. Conversations quieted. The room settling into that collective stillness that always came before something important. Then he looked. Claire stood at the far end of the aisle. For a moment, everything else faded. Not disappeared, just softened. She looked exactly how she should. Not perfect, not idealized, real, steady. Doug watched as she took her first step forward. Alone, not abandoned, not unsupported, just walking. Each step was measured, confident, unhurried. Doug followed her progress down the aisle, his expression unreadable to anyone who might have been watching. But no one was. They had no reason to. This wasn't his moment. And for once, Doug didn't feel like something had been taken from him. Because nothing had been promised, and nothing had been assumed. Claire reached the front, turning to face the person waiting for her. The ceremony continued. Doug listened. Not to every word. Just enough. Vows. Promises. A future being built, consciously, deliberately. Very different from the one he had once believed in. Better, maybe. More honest. He found himself nodding slightly at something he barely caught. Yeah, he murmured under his breath. After the ceremony, the room shifted again. Music returned. Conversations restarted. People moved freely, gravitating toward the pieces of the day that mattered most to them. Doug stood slowly, making his way toward the exit without urgency. He had done what he came to do. He paused near the doorway, giving the room one last glance. Claire was surrounded. Friends, family, laughter. Exactly where she belonged. Doug nodded once, almost to himself, and turned. Doug. He stopped. Not because of the name, because of the voice. Claire approached quickly, careful not to trip over the edge of her dress, her expression bright but focused. You came, she said. It wasn't surprise. It was acknowledgement. Doug inclined his head. I said I'd think about it. She laughed softly. And you decided to. Yes. They stood there for a moment, the noise of the reception moving around them without pressing in. I'm glad, she said. Doug studied her. You look. He paused, then chose the word carefully. Certain. Claire smiled. I feel that way. He nodded. That's good. Another brief silence, but not uncomfortable. Claire shifted slightly, glancing back toward the room before returning her gaze to him. I'm not going to ask again, she said. Doug raised an eyebrow. For what? She smiled faintly. For anything that doesn't already exist. Doug watched her closely. And what does exist? Claire considered that. This, she said simply. Doug let out a quiet breath. Yeah. They stood together for a few seconds more, not filling the space, not forcing anything into it, just standing. Claire tilted her head slightly. Will you stay? She asked. Doug glanced past her at the movement of the room, then back at her. For a little while, he said. That was enough. Claire nodded, her smile easy now. Okay. She stepped back, not pressing further, not holding him there. Doug followed her into the room. Not beside her, not behind her, just present. Later, much later, as the reception settled into something softer and less structured, Emma found him near the edge of the dance floor. You look like you're evaluating a system, she said, stepping beside him. Doug glanced at her. I am, she smiled. And, he considered it. It's functional. Emma laughed. That might be the most you've ever complimented something. He didn't deny it. Lily joined them a moment later, slightly out of breath. I am never wearing shoes like that again, she declared. Doug glanced down. They seem impractical. They are, she said. Finally, we agree on something. Emma nudged her. Don't scare him off. Doug's mouth edged into something almost like a smile. Too late, he said. Claire appeared a moment later, her hair slightly out of place now. Her expression relaxed in a way it hadn't been all day. Hey, she said. Hey. Lily and Emma echoed. Doug nodded. Claire looked at them, at all of them, then let out a small, satisfied breath. This is weird, she said. Emma grinned. Yeah. Lily shrugged. But not terrible. Doug considered that. No, he said. Not terrible. Claire smiled, then reached out briefly. Not to hold, not to cling. Just to touch his arm lightly. A small, deliberate gesture. Then she stepped back again, returning to the rhythm of the evening. Doug watched her go, then looked at the two women beside him. Huh, he said. Emma raised an eyebrow. That seems to be your word. Doug nodded. It fits. They stood there for a moment longer. Not as a family. Not as strangers. Something in between. Something undefined. But real. Later, when Doug returned to his apartment, everything was exactly where he had left it. The futon. The counter. The quiet. He set his jacket down, moved through his routine without thinking, and sat. The silence settled around him. Familiar. Steady. But not quite as absolute. Doug leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He thought about the aisle. About Claire walking alone. About choosing not to stand there and still being there anyway. He considered the day, the conversations, the small moments that didn't demand anything but offered something regardless. Doug let out a slow breath. Ha! The word lingered, softer this time. Not confusion. Not resistance. Something closer to acceptance. Not everything. Not all at once. But enough. And for Doug Bishop, that was more than he had expected to have again. Not a beginning. Not a replacement. But a continuation of something that had almost ended. Something imperfect. Something unclaimed. Something real.